So I've had a lot of questions about if we're liking Saxon Math for the middle grades, about how our schedule is working, and a ton of questions about Sonlight Language Arts. So let's talk about it. If you're new here, I'm Rian, a Christ-following wife and a homeschool mom to 3 boys. Here we talk all things homeschool, and we will learn together how to use our roles as wife, mom, teacher, and homemaker in order to glorify God. So our semester update always happens a little bit later than most people. Typically people break for semester at Christmas because we year-round homeschool. Our semester is a little bit later than everyone else's. But I thought I would just catch you guys up on how our homeschool year is going and how my break from YouTube is going and all the things. So let's get started. So first, let me talk about the few things that I am loving this semester. So I told you some of these in my quarter update, so I'm just going to reiterate them, but some of them are totally new that I haven't talked about before. So something that I am loving is our schedule. So for the first time ever, the schedule that I implemented at the beginning of the year is what I am still loving now. That being said, we did take a break from it for a while because there was a season where it just was not working. A lot of that had to do with being on YouTube so much, but some of that was just the phase that my baby was in at the time. But now that he is, I won't say more independent, but he's a different kind of dependent on me. We have gone back to using our schedule the past few weeks and it has worked like a charm. And so I'll post a picture here kind of what it is, just to remind you, I've talked about it before. But we just have blocks. We don't have, from this minute to this minute. It's just a chunk of time when we work on specific things. But if I hold fast to the schedule, which the biggest part for me isn't getting started on the right time, it is knowing when to call it quits. So I am really bad about starting something but wanting to see it all the way through. But instead, if I follow my schedule and I say, okay, it's 11 o'clock, now we are going to put away this work and we're going to get started on our Sonlight, I find our day actually works a lot better because those little things that don't get done are either things that we can just kind of add on in the afternoon and finish up real quick, or they are things that easily roll over to the next day without putting us that far behind. And by sticking to the schedule, my part of homeschool is done right around lunchtime, which it has been years since I can say that we were done with school at lunch. Years. That being said, I am done at lunch mostly. My kids are not. They still have some more stuff that they have to work on in the afternoon after lunch, but my part is done. This also is teaching my big kids some responsibility because what is left at the end of the day is all on them, and I don't sit there and just hound them. I say, here's what is left, here's the remainder. It's all stuff that you can do independently. It has to be done along with your chores, or else there is no screen time. There is no whatever fun thing they wanted to do that day. And so they have to take responsibility and step up or deal with the consequences. And they've done both. They have learned what the consequences feel like and they don't like them. And so they are doing a lot better at just stepping up and taking responsibility. This also helps me with my preschooler to make sure that we are keeping his preschool short and sweet. Not too short because I am who I am and I love preschool. And I think preschool is important, but it's not 2 or 3 hours. I am that kind of person that I could drag it on and I could just keep going and he's done well before I'm done. But this helps me to keep it right at an hour or so. Now, this doesn't include the time that he is doing learning type stuff with his brothers or the time that he is listening in on our group subjects. But as far as one-on-one time with me where he's fully concentrated, it's only about an hour. And that is kind of the sweet spot for him at the stage that he's at right now. So another thing I'm loving, you're not going to be surprised. Sonlight, history, Bible, literature. It's still just going so well. And what I love about it is it is so simple. You read these pages, you ask these questions, you look some stuff up on a map, have a little discussion about what you read, and you're done. You can do the timeline figures, you can do the lap books. We don't do all that. And I don't feel like we have to get the best out of Sonlight. Now, I'm sure that we could have those things and it would be even better, but we don't have the space for that. And I'm not worrying about that right now. So I make sure that my boys know the answers to the questions. If they don't, then if it's something I've read or they've read, I say, you can't find the answer, then you have to reread it. And I make them go reread it. So they're doing a lot better at paying attention when I read. And so they're retaining a lot actually. And I love that it's working for both of them. So they are in 4th grade and 6th grade, and it's not hard for one and easy for the other. It's just kind of meeting them right where they are, because it isn't a subject that builds on itself, right? And so they're just retaining what their level needs to retain, and it's fine. And so their favorite read alouds so far have been The Sign of the Beaver, which we finished up right around Christmas. And then they also loved The Witch of Blackbird Pond, which they weren't so sure about. They're like, we're reading about a witch. But I love that one. That was my favorite so far this year. But we thoroughly enjoyed both of those books. And then this other one, you're not going to be surprised either, but Saxon 5-4 and Saxon 7-6. I wasn't sure how I would like Saxon after Math 3. Well, obviously my older son used 5-4 and 6-5 and now is in 7-6. So once I saw that I liked 5-4 with him, I was like, okay, well, I think 6-5 will be fine. But once we start going past that, I'm just not sure. It's so good, guys. And the magic key for us is Nicole the math lady. I will never do Sonlight without her, I don't think. My son, between last year when he did it independently / with my help, and this year, his grades are way higher. Not that he was failing before, not that he was doing terribly, but he was pretty consistently getting B's, still getting A's, but a lot of B's. And this year it's rare for him to get a B. He's getting a lot of A's. For some reason, the way she explains things and the way that she makes him work through his problems, like the sample problems, he is understanding it and loving it, and I'm loving it because I don't have to teach it. And so I like math. I enjoy doing math. But teaching math and loving math are not the same thing. And so we were making it, but it's a lot better when someone else gets to do that. Okay, now the good part is there's nothing this semester that I am totally hating. So I feel like that's a win. There are some stuff that I just have some big fat question marks on. And that is mostly Sonlight Language Arts. I know everyone keeps asking, how are you liking it? How are you liking it? I still don't know. I do not dislike it, but I do not love it. So I'm going to talk about both the levels that we're using. We're using level D for my 6th grader. And so this goes right along with the History Bible Literature D that we're using right now. And I don't know how I feel about it. So the readers are 100% great. He is answering the questions well. He's enjoying them. I think those are great. They include Grammar Ace in there for the grammar component, and we are liking that a lot. It's very cut and dry, and here's what you read, and you guys talk about it. Give some examples. There are like 5-ish activities that you can choose from. We typically do all of them. Sometimes there's one that I'm like, that's a little too involved and I don't care to do that. But there's usually 2 worksheets, and there's a Schoolhouse Rock video component, and then a couple other activities thrown in there. And so far that part is going amazingly for us. So we don't do their recommended vocabulary, which is Wordly Wise. We did Wordly Wise from the time he was like in 1st or 2nd grade until he was in 5th grade, I believe. And I love that program. I just didn't feel like we needed it this year. And so we're not using that component, and we're not using their suggested spelling component. He still is doing a spelling program. He's doing spelling workout. I almost said spelling power. It's not that. Spelling workout. And that's still going really well. It's a little more challenging this year for him, but that's good. It's not that he's like terrible at it, but he's having to work a lot harder to pass those tests. So I can't speak to the vocab and spelling components, but the grammar part is good. So the writing is what I'm just not sure about. The instruction is very minimal. I feel like it's supposed to be a little more independent, but I feel like I am having to come in and add a lot or interpret kind of what they're asking of him or what they're explaining to him. I'm having to kind of restate it for him in a way that makes more sense, or I'm having to expound upon it because it's very like, you read a couple paragraphs, then it's like, okay, go do your assignment. And I feel like sometimes he's just like, I don't know what to do. And that may be because they're expecting that you have done Sonlight all along. And so they have taught some things that maybe my son's not familiar with, or maybe he was taught a different way, or that could just be how it's written. I'm not quite sure because we haven't done much else in the Sonlight Language Arts. But this also may be just this kid. So writing does not come naturally to him at all. It is something he has to work at. Reading comes very naturally to him, so I thought that writing would, but it turns out those are not the same thing. He loves math, he loves reading, loves science, loves history. Writing is just not on his list of favorite things to do. And so it also could be just I'm having a harder time with this kid. So it's too early to tell whether we'll do this next year or not. But those are just my notes on it so far. It is very, in my opinion, mediocre on the writing, but that might be me, might be my son. It's not necessarily a bad program in and of itself. So then my fourth grader is doing level 4. So for Sonlight, they go levels 1 through 4, and then around level 5, I think, is when you're supposed to switch over to doing whatever language arts corresponds with the core that you're using, or the history, Bible, literature component that you're using. And so he's still on level 4, and I like it a lot better overall compared to the level D. So they have their own spelling written into this curriculum, and so he's using that, and it's going really well. It's very simple, but it's working. So I'm fine with simple as long as it works. Then their grammar and writing component are just kind of wrapped up all together. And so they don't have those separate things that you're supposed to pull in, those separate resources. They just have it all together. So he does copy work on day 1. We use the 4-day program. So he does copy work on day 1. He does copy work application on day 2. And then usually day 3 and 4, we are studying a new concept, and then he's doing some sort of writing assignment on the 4th day that talks about that, or that uses that concept. And so far this is working really well. Again, it's pretty like cut and dry, and then you just kind of let them run with it, but not as much as level D. And so, but again, this kid is a little more of a natural writer. Still not his strongest suit. But I'm enjoying level 4 a lot more than I am level D. So I don't know if that is because it's actually better, or if it's just the child, or the fact that we're jumping in on level 4 as opposed to level D, where they were supposed to already have all this previous work done, if that makes sense. So on both of them, I'm just not sure about the cohesiveness of it all. If it just seems kind of like, we're gonna work on this, now we're gonna work on this, now we're going to work on a persuasive essay. Now we're going to work on a narrative, and now we're going to work on, and it's just like, oh, okay. It doesn't seem to like flow super well, but I mean, they're still getting all the things. It's just maybe not in the order that I thought it should be in. I'm loving the dictation and copy work. So the level D is dictation, level 4 is still copy work. I'm loving that because I'm a big supporter of dictation and copy work. I feel like that is one way to become a better writer. And I love that they are tied into what we're already reading. So it's tied into whatever readers they're reading. And so it just kind of helps reiterate the book that they've already been in. Overall, I just wish there was a little more instruction, especially on the writing side of things. And I just wish there was a little more flow to what we were learning when. I'm sure they have some sort of rhyme and reason to why they teach things in the order they do, but I just don't quite grasp it. But overall, it's not a bad curriculum. I'm not going to say that it's bad. I just don't know that it's for us, but I'm going to wait till the end of the year to make that decision for sure. So overall, it has been a great first semester of the 2022-2023 school year. I love that we have kind of cut back the excess this year, but really beefed up the things that are important. And that's in our school and in my personal life, hence me cutting back on YouTube a lot. And just adding those stricter routines and just trusting God in everything. And just saying, you know what, here's my best. You can do the rest. Has just been so freeing, both in homeschool and my personal life, like I said. And so my break is going super well. And I'm just amazed at, I knew my brain was on YouTube a lot. I knew that I spent a lot of time filming and scripting and editing and posting and engaging and all the things. I knew that took time. I wasn't quite aware of how much time, but more importantly, how much brain space that took, how much thought went into that. Even when I wasn't physically doing something on YouTube, I was constantly thinking about it. And just putting that on the back burner for a little bit has just been a breath of fresh air for me. It has been amazing to enjoy my family more. It has been amazing to not go to bed at 1 o'clock every morning and get up at 6. I was consistently getting 5 hours of sleep, typically broken sleep because my baby doesn't sleep well still. And I didn't realize how tired I was. I'm still not getting probably the recommended amount of sleep, but I am going to bed by 12 pretty much every night unless I am dumb and stay up and, just waste time. But typically I am in bed by midnight, which most of you are like, wow, great. But for me, that's a big deal. So now I'm getting closer to 6, occasionally 7 hours of sleep, which for me is unheard of. Again, it's still broken sleep because my 1-year-old just doesn't think sleep is really that important. But I'm just feeling a lot more refreshed, a lot more able to focus on other things. Our life is still busy. I filled out my January calendar and there are 4 days that I don't have to go anywhere. 4. And yeah, so it's still busy. But the thing is, I don't feel burnt out. I don't feel like we run, and then I just feel dead at the end of the day. I still have time to sit up and talk with my husband. I still have the time and brain capacity to play with my kids and to have conversations with my kids that before I was just so tired I couldn't even engage. So my break's going well. We'll see what the future has, but I thank you guys so much for sticking around, hearing me out, and let me know down below, how is your semester going? I thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.